Good morning, everyone. It is 10 a.m. and as promised, we will get started. If someone doesn't mind admitting those who are in the lobby, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our June 6th Town Hall meeting. And just to do a quick overview of what we'll talk about on today, my name is Felina Harris, and I am the local government business relationship manager for North Carolina Department of Information Technology. I have met a lot of you, but there are a lot of you who I have not met, and I would love to meet you in the near future. So today's overview is we're going to have announcements and introductions by Jamie Wood, who is the Director of Enterprise Customer Experience. And then we'll talk about Net Plus Basics and Invoice Introduction by Dawn Uri. Next, we'll have statewide contracts overview by James Tasnosh. I should have learned how to say James's name before today. And we'll also talk about artificial intelligence. If you all could please mute your mics. If you could please mute your microphones, we would love that. Thank you so much. Artificial Intelligence by Keith Briggs, and then we'll have an open forum discussion. We are going to attempt to try our best to keep this within 1 hour. And if we go over a few minutes, it may just be a few minutes, but we will offer the opportunity to talk about some of these in deeper detail in other sessions. But we'll try to keep this within 1 hour for everyone.
Thank you.
Next up,
And
go
I'll just do the quick introductions right quick to get those taken care of. Again, my name is Jamie Wood. Good to be with y'all. And it was really awesome to see so many of our local government stakeholders recently down in Wilmington at the Nickel Jesus conference recently. That was a really great time to get together and collaborate. And with these town halls, we always like to bring in any new faces and names that we can. So I'm going to share an announcement about our new Chief Operating Officer, Jonathan Shaw, who has been appointed. Jonathan is going to be focusing on building capacity within our administrative areas. And he's going to be continuing to build some of the capabilities in our agency as our new chief operating officer. Jonathan has been with our agency for a long time. He's been with DIT since 2019, acting as our general counsel, and he'll continue in that role as well, and with the chief operating officer role. So we like to always share new names and faces with you, and we actually have another new name and a new face with us today. So I want to introduce Dylan Frick. He is our Legislative Affairs Director. And I'm going to actually let Dylan tell you a little bit about what a Legislative Affairs Director does for agencies and for DIT. So welcome, Dylan.
Thanks, Jamie, and hello to everybody. It's great to be here. I'm Dylan Frick, the Legislative Affairs Director for DIT. I joined in March, coming over from the private sector where I was a contract lobbyist for 3 years. So my job is to represent the department's priorities, initiatives, and interests at the state legislature. They're in session right now, and as soon as this ends, I'm about to walk back down there. We are currently in the legislative short session. The primary objective of legislators in the short session is to pass a budget adjustment bill for the remainder of the fiscal year using updated revenue projections and numbers that came out last month, actually, from OSBM. What's going on with that right now? The Speaker of the House and the Senate President Pro Tem are currently deciding on a final spending number, and we anticipate that budget to be introduced later this month or mid-July. Cross your fingers, knock on wood, with adoption hopefully by August. But I, of course, will keep everyone posted about that. Top priorities of our department this month, everyone's heard about broadband. That is our priority for this month, is to get our broadband bill passed and get that money flowing out to local governments and counties and expand access to hundreds of thousands of North Carolina residents and businesses. We're also pursuing several initiatives around cybersecurity and privacy. Again, thank you for having me. Happy to take any questions, and please contact me anytime if I can assist you. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you. We appreciate your time. We know it's a very busy week, but it is good to hear from you and have our stakeholders here get to know your name and your role. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
All right, Felina, you can take it back over and lead us through this packed agenda.
All right. Again, Jamie's right. We do have a packed agenda. So the next thing I want to share with you all is, let me make that bigger. Really quick, if you could pull out your phones and click on this QR code. This is going to be beneficial for our last speaker on artificial intelligence. If you could please take this survey, it is anonymous. And Keith will talk about this at the end of, during his presentation. So I'm going to leave it up there for a few more seconds and we'll go to the next slide. I will put it up again right before our second speaker. So next up, we have a presentation from Dawn Uri, who is our billing services manager. She is going to discuss with us Net Plus basics and invoice introduction. And I'm going to stop sharing so that Dawn can share. Welcome, Dawn.
Good morning, everybody. I keep getting the lobby pop-ups on my screen. I'm going to go over the basics of how to log into the customer care portal, access your invoice accounts, get your account set up properly, and show you a couple of things that you can do with regard to your invoicing. So I can pop the link into the chat so you can have it. But once you get onto the system, you'll get that link when you get the email notifications for your invoice. So you'll use your NCID to log in. And the first thing that you'll see is a pop-up. And with this pop-up, we put information on here pertaining to anything that's happening within the billing system. So if we have a service that has had issues, you'll see that notification here of what the issue is and how it's affected your billing. We've had some issues in the past where a vendor one of our vendors didn't send us data, and we couldn't bill the data, and so we had to basically bill 2 months of data with the next invoice cycle. We will document that in this pop-up and provide all the information to you with relation to what's happening in the billing system. And also there's information too as well about how to open a ticket to us in ServiceNow if you have any questions about anything as well. And you check this box, close this notification, you get a continue to go into the menu. So this is the CCP menu. It's got four selections. The one that most folks use is invoice retrieval. When you go into invoice retrieval, it will come in and it will populate the list of invoices that you have access to. And it will do it according to the latest billing cycle. So we just released the bill about 2 weeks ago. So that's the May bill. But if you click this arrow and drop down, you will see that you have access to every invoice that was generated since we came up onto Net Plus. Our first bill run from Net Plus was December of 2020. So historically, all of the invoices are available all the way back. So you can go as far back as you want. So the way that this screen is laid out, if I have access to a lot of information, but if you only need access to a subset of this information, that's what will get assigned to your account. So your login, maybe you only need to see one account. That's what you'll be assigned once you tell us what that is. So the information at there's two levels of information that you'll receive. One is what we call a parent invoice. That is a summary invoice, and the summary invoice is exactly what it looks to be. So it's a summary of everything that you've been billed for that particular part of your city, town, county. It will also show all the payments that were applied over the course of that particular time for all of the accounts. So it kind of looks like a remittance page almost. It will show you a previous balance. It will show you the total payments. It will show you any outstanding balance after that. And then it will show you the new charges and your current balance. This column over here to the right are year-to-date payments and year-to-date charges. If you scroll down to the next page after that, these are the totals by each of the individual accounts underneath that particular parent. This happens to be the computing services invoice parent. So what you're seeing is basically the grand total, which should reflect everything that's in the first page. The only difference is the year-to-date column will show each of the individual, the monthly service and equipment charges, the one-time charges, usage-based, and if there's any adjustment that was applied to the account. That's the sum total of all the accounts, and then it does a total by each individual account. And this particular invoice is only a summary. It has no detail in it whatsoever. So if you have a question on any of these numbers, you will need to go to the detail invoice to know what those billings are. And so, for instance, this would be a detail invoice. So we call that a child account, and a child account is your detail invoice. So this has a very similar first page where it shows your previous balance, your payments, your year-to-date payments, an outstanding balance if the payments don't match the previous balance, any new charges for the month, year-to-date charges, current balance, and it also shows applied payments, and it's got a signature line as well. The second part of this gives you a summary by the type of service. So in this case, you can see the breakdown is between desktop services, email services, and NCID Active Directory. And all of the invoices will have this categorization summary, is what we call this.
We do have a question in the chat, Dawn,
Okay.
about one of the items that was listed as new charges. And the question was, what does new charges mean? And I'm pretty sure it's the charges for services rendered in that recent month, but I wanted to let you respond to make sure that was correct.
The new charges would be the charges incurred in that invoice. So if you look at the invoice, you'll see that it says a billing date of May. That's when basically the month that we generated the invoice, but the billing period is April 1st through April 30th. So the new charges are for the charges incurred during the month of April.
I wanted to actually jump in and also talk about one element that you covered, which is the credits and adjustments. That's a really important field. That's when we can go back and make a credit if we did have an error in a prior invoice cycle. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that's kind of where those things show up if we have to do any of those reconciliations because of a billing error. So I wanted to highlight that field.
Right. And so basically, and actually it will show up in a couple of different ways. If it's a manual credit that we issue based on incorrect billing or something that has happened, it will show up on a line as a credit in the summary here, but also as a line item below in the one time in like this area of the. So as I scroll through your totals here, it will show up in this area. In the case of the CS bill, if you had managed hosting with us, for instance, and we were billing you, a server, you would see the billing by asset, by server, and it would. So you could see your total cost for having that individual server, and it would summarize everything to the top. So all of your one-time or what we call feed-based charges, and that would be email, NCID, project management, if you happen to use project management, and Active Directory, those type of things will show up in this very first section underneath the actual bill code that's being used. So, and it'll show you the service that you're being billed for. You'll see that it says 30 April, so you'll know that it's for the month of April, and your quantities, and then your total charge for each one of those line items. And this is where you see your detail. So if you have a question on a charge that's in the summary level of a category, you can go down here and look and see, because there could be several items rolled up into that category. So you can see the breakdown of the items here, and then we can address a very particular item if you have a question on that. And then there's very similar situation with the telecom. There's a telecom parent which will show everything. So if you have in the old system, they called it a distribution list. If you had multiple distributions, they would show up as summaries under this particular top level parent. But again, it shows you your previous balance, everything, your payments against all of your telecom accounts. And then the same thing, the summaries, the grand total in a summary box based on monthly service and equipment, one-time charges, usage-based services, or if there's any credits and adjustments. And it will also do that at the individual branch levels. Then there's another sub-level of parent, and this is probably where most of you all will see your information, is at this level, because you'll have something that has 4 digits after it for your telecom bills, but it's the same base. It's still considered a summary invoice, so it has the same level, showing all the payments for everything under that parent, and the summary. This one has the summary of each of the individual accounts, the telecom accounts, based again on monthly service or monthly recurring charges, as we call them, one-time charges, usage charges, if there are any, or credits and adjustments. And then again, it's just this one is a completely just summary information for every single account that falls under there. And if you have a particular account where you're going to question what's in it, then you can go to you can go to that account which has the detail. And Jamie, if there's any other questions, please let me know. The details will be very similar to the other invoice, the computing services type invoice. It will show you, again, previous balance, payments, outstanding charge balance, new charges, which would be for the month of April, and the current balance, payments that were applied. And again, in here's the categorizations. This particular account has cellular and local service. So you can see that it's broken down. Then it goes into the details by your different types of phones. So if you have landline phones, it's going to show you a summary of the billing for each one of the phone numbers that are associated to this particular account, monthly recurring charges in one column, one-time amounts in one column, and usage charges, and then the totals in the last column. And it does the same thing for cellular, mobile devices. So it breaks out between having a desk phone or VoIP phone and a cellular phone. So you can see all of the numbers that you have, what they're being charged, and it summarizes the total charges to the phone number. And they have a lot of mobile phones. And then it summarizes all of that at the bottom for every single phone number across the bottom lines as well. Then go ahead.
We do have one question that I about who to contact if you have a credit balance and you need to request a refund. So I was going to just pop in the chat one of our service catalog items that is a catalog item that you can use to get all kinds of support from our billing services group. If you need to get access to Net Plus, if you need to get access to an account, and certainly for one of those situations where you need to engage with the group to get something like a refund or ask a question. So I wanted to put that out there.
It depends on when you're talking about getting a refund. There's kind of two separate things there. If you have an outstanding credit balance and you're asking to get, like, can you just give me a check for that? That's our AR group. If you think you were overbilled for something, and you want us to and that you need a credit back for overcharging or something like that, yes, that would come to my group. So after you have your summary phone charges, then you go down to the detail for each phone, so you can see what the charge was for. And with cellular, there's always a base charge, and then there's whatever fees are associated to that charge. And then it will also give you a list of your usage. And as you can see here, this is like $0 usage, but it will tell you the phone calls that were made and received, the numbers, the locations, and the number of minutes used. And it will do that for every single, cellular, and also it will do that. I guess these are all cellular. They did have a bunch of cellular. So, and then it will, and for each phone, it will total at the bottom for each phone the total charge for that phone, which should tie back up to what you see at the top. Let's try to find one that has circuits in it. Let's see. Maybe this one. Okay. For things like circuits, it's very similar. You see the phones in the phone charges. These happen to be PRIs because you're seeing the different single access lines. But then it'll drop down and you'll see your circuits. It'll give you the circuit number and will tell you what that circuit is being billed. This happens to be a point-to-point circuit. And you can see where we issued a credit here. You can see that there's the credit issued. So if the credit is issued against an asset that you have based on some incorrect billing, it will show under the asset. So this is where you'll see that type of credit. If the credit gets applied from a work order, because let's say you disconnected a service mid-month, you will see that credit along with the work order information associated to that asset as well. And so it will give you this whole list of circuits. Here's a for instance of that. So you have this circuit was, being billed for point-to-point circuit, and it was removed as of July of 23. So it had a net credit of this amount. So it will prorate your service, and it will prorate your credit based upon the effective date. And you will see all of that in your bill associated to that particular circuit, phone number, whatever asset you're doing this for. These are site IDs. So if you're doing LAN or managed WAN with us, you'll see billing to a site ID. The same thing applies. It's going to tell you what the charge is for that particular site, and all the work order information will show up against that as well. And for each asset, it totals at the bottom. So in general, that is those are the basically 4 different invoices, but there's 2 basic types of invoices, and I just want to make sure that I put this another point of clarification. There's what we call a parent or summary invoice. That's typically going to be at the level of just saying something like this DOA-0023 or DOA-CS. That is merely a summary of the underlying accounts that are being billed. So if you're looking at that, you're just going to see the total summary of that. Each of the individual accounts are what we call the child or detail invoice. So to know exactly what you're being billed for, that is the invoice that you need to look at in terms of verifying that this is my phone, this is my circuit. Yes, I have NCDIT service, or I have, yes, I use project management services from DIT, and that's my bill. So that is where you will see the details on that. Because I was getting a lot of questions from folks that were just looking at the summary because that's all they were given, and not understanding why the totals were the totals were what they were. So I just kind of wanted to make that that point so that you would know that there's definitely a difference between the two. And again, if you wanted to go to a previous month because you're like, I forgot to pull this, you can go back and it will repopulate with the previous month's invoices. And so, and also just wanted to also let you know, just a reminder that the billing date is going to be the date that the invoice was generated. The billing period will show you the days or the months that it's being billed for. So we bill in arrears, so the billing date in this case is April. The billing period is March 1st through March 31st. So just, for clarification, because sometimes some folks needed some clarification for that. So you can cancel that. Oh, and by the way, you can also, you can download any of these. These are PDFs. You can save them off. You can print them. You can do whatever to that you need to with the invoice. So that's the other thing too is that we do have some reporting, and you can go in. You can go into if you are like a CIO or something and you want your data in a spreadsheet, you can actually get your data by going into download invoice data, and I'll just do like get monthly charges. I can go in here, I can specify the date I want the data, I can specify a particular account, or I can specify every account. So if I specify the top level that you have access to, that will give you everything under it. If I want to just, look at one particular thing, I can do that. It will put it into basically a CSV, but you have the option of putting into a text file, but that's not very usable for me anyway.
And I'll mention that a lot of our CIOs have done this and then put a Power BI dashboard on top of it to do all kinds of cool visualizations and things. So I love that you're showing this export.
Yeah, so basically all you have to do here is you pick the month you want, you do a submit. It's going to go out there and it's going to give you a download, and you can open up the Excel spreadsheet, and it basically gives you all of that data in a spreadsheet format. So you can see the detail of everything that was billed for every single account. It's circuits. In this case, this is a CS bill, so it's going to show you servers. But if it was telephones and circuits, you would have that. It shows you the quantities, the description of what the billing's for, and the charge for that. So you have that in a really nice kind of Excel spreadsheet that you can look at. If there's some, as Jamie said, if you want to put it in some sort of Power BI or Tableau type thing to do, like a reporting or a trending or something like that. So we have that option. That was the monthly recurring charges. You can do that for one-times as well. Call records are the usage charges. So this would be all of your usage data which show up on the phones, like the twos and the froms. There's also one that's get account data. This allows you to get all of it in a zip file. So if you did this, there are some of these checkboxes that will have zero. It will generate a spreadsheet that's zero because there's just no information. But if you submit that, it's going to go out and create a zip file for you of all of the different reports as well. And so if you open up the zip file, you'll see they're all in here. There's an account report. This gives you a circuit report, so you can actually see the circuits you're being billed for. This is your monthly recurring charge report. This is your one-time report, and it's called basically non-recurring charge. You can get a list of the telephone numbers and the usage report all in this zip file. So you can look at these and, and it'll give you, I'll open like this one up just to kind of show you. But here's a report of accounts. And so it gives you basically a running balance in totals and what's in arrears and what was billed based on what we see within. And it gives you all the payments, recurring, one-times, usage, all kind of summarized by account, and gives you year-to-date numbers as well. The circuit report, like I said, will show, yeah, I know it's big, don't convert. But it will show you all the different circuits, site IDs, anything that's considered a circuit or a network device. It will show you the locations. It will show you all the information about those particular circuits. So you can see everything that you're being billed for in one place. Instead of having to open up every single account, you can see it all in one report. So that's a nice thing about that. The same thing for telephones. And the usage, well, like I said, it gives you all of the information in terms of, here's the phone number, here's the start time, the duration, where it called, and the destination phone number. So it gives you that kind of information if you're looking to find out, who's been doing what on their phone. I don't know, but sometimes people like to keep track of the different numbers that are being called or different types of things there. So there's a lot of good information in these reports that basically you can run from here. And just like this account history report, this is the same thing as the account report. So you can pick a date and you can do that, and we'll give you right across the board just the information on that particular account in sort of like a view of, you know, here's the account, here was the invoice that was generated in May, here, and it will tell you all of the individual charges here. This is a parent account, so you're not going to see this populated in a parent account, but you also get the information straight across the bottom as well. And if there was an asset associated to it, you would see that along the bottom. So
this is this is awesome overview. I'm glad you're getting into some of the cellular utilization. It's a great place to look for potential cost savings with any lines that may not be fully utilized. We haven't gotten any other questions in the chat,
okay.
but if there are any other questions, billing related or Net Plus related, feel free to pop them in the chat. We're going to have Dawn back again in the future to share some more tips and tricks with us. But we are really glad you could have you could join us this quarter and show us some of these kind of power user tips with
Right.
Net Plus. It's been very, very helpful.
Thank you
And
so much.
yeah, and also I want to recommend that when you exit, don't exit, but actually log out and just make sure you've logged out. The other thing too, I just want to make sure that everybody, I want to tell everybody, if you haven't gotten a login to the CCP and you want to log into the CCP, your initial login with your NCID is going to create your account structure, but it's going to assign you a dummy account because we don't know what you are supposed to have access to. So when you log in for the first time, you will get the menu, you will get everything, but you won't see anything but an account called dummy. So what we would need is just a ticket open to us saying, here's my NCID. I just logged in. I need these accounts assigned to me, or I need access to, you know, you can give me a parent account. If you need access to every invoice underneath that, you can give me individual invoice numbers, individual account numbers, whatever that level of access that you need. Just open a ticket to us, and we will assign that and make sure that you can see it and have access to it. So, but I just wanted to kind of make that reminder that the initial login is merely a handshake with the system to populate your NCID and get your account structured. And then the access comes as a secondary step.
Thank you so much, Dawn. This was very, very helpful. Oh, I'm sorry, Jamie, you were on mute. You were talking.
No, I was just going to say, the catalog item that I put in the chat is the same one that will get you assistance that Dawn mentioned about getting into Net Plus. And there's a question from Andrea about how do I get a new employee into Net Plus? So if you have a new staff member, and I'm assuming that you're asking about into Net Plus, that same catalog item. So I'm going to type it in the chat again, but that is a great way to engage Dawn and her team for any of the assistance that she's mentioned here today.
Yeah, I just popped in the link to the customer care portal. So if they have an NCID, they'll have to make an initial login. That will set them up for access, but they won't see anything until we get the ticket telling us what they need access to. So once we get that, and my team can go in and set up their access, then they will communicate back and forth, make sure that you're logging in to see, they're logging in and can see what they need to see, and you will also be added to the POC list as well. So you will receive all of the notifications that go out when the invoices are generated and ready for viewing, and any kind of communications that we send out through the application.
Perfect. Dawn, this information was timely. It was perfect. So a lot of the things that you talked about today, I've been asked those questions just this week and just today, some of those things. So hopefully everyone who needed that information, you were able to get the information from the presentation. Dawn, we thank you so much for sharing all of this information. It was extremely helpful, even for me, and we appreciate you for being here on today.
No,
All right.
I'm glad to do it.
Thank you. And Dawn, I'm sure that we may be doing something else again in detail, and we'll reach out to you to get that set up. Thank you so much.
Sure thing.
So if you all would look really, really quick on the screen, if you were not here earlier, if you could take this survey really quick, just pull out your phone, scan the QR code, and take the quick survey. Next up, and as I talked about before, we were going to try to keep it within 1 hour, but you all have to admit, like I did, that was very important what Dawn just shared, and we appreciate you for your questions that you asked. That lets us know that you were engaged and you were interested in the information that we shared. Next up, we have James Tanstosh. James, I'm sorry if I messed your name up. To talk about statewide contracts, and next we'll have, after James, we'll have Keith Briggs to speak. So James, you're up.
No, you did really great. Yeah, okay, good. You can hear me. So I'll go real quick through some things that are available for statewide IT procurement. The first thing I'll show you is to get to our webpage that has a lot of information. I usually just type in state IT procurement, something along those lines, and then Google will help me get there. I go to the statewide webpage. Okay, it loaded real slow. And I'll share that we have, this kind of ties into Keith's presentation, but we have a new chat bot, so that can help you. And so I'll ask it the question of who is able to use statewide IT procurement contracts? And I'll share the answer from the chat bot. The chat bot is learning every time it answers a question. So I've already asked it this 2 times today. So I was, and it kind of gives you the same answer, but a little different every time. But it's available for use by executive state agencies, non-executive state agencies, and then those include, and I'll say local, municipal, county governments. So there's a wide range of people that can use state IT contracts. They're mandatory usually for state agencies, but they're convenience contracts for non-state agencies, including municipalities, counties, local governments, towns. So you are available to use most state IT contracts. So the next thing, when you get to our state site, there is a lot of information here. Some of it applies to maybe only state agencies, but a lot of it can apply to your organization or can help you. And one thing I'll share is you can go to our IT procurement forms and templates and get our invitation, all kinds, we have requests for quotes here, IFBs. We also, I'm just going to bring up the request for proposal so you can get our template, including some of our optional RFP terms, and use it so you can download it. And this template, I have used it when I was at NC Central, and it'll work for counties, cities. You just use this to create your RFP, and you can fill in the red items as they pertain to you. And you can change it in any way that you need to meet your state agency. Sorry, I went too far here. So just so you know that that's available for you, and there's lots of forms in there. I was also able to put it in the chat GPT and ask it to get me an RFP, and it did. So that might be a shortcut for you. So the key thing where I'm going to go to today is our state contracts. We have one of the big ones that a lot of agencies use is our short-term staffing contract. That's a contract that allows you to get IT staffing resources by going through here. Sometimes that's a tough thing to do if you have a project and it's difficult to get the expertise you need to help you. You can go to this page and the links have information on how you can utilize this contract. In this case, you just need to assign onto what we call a VMS page. We have a provider that helps us with this, but they can help you get set up to where you can get additional resources on a short-term basis for IT projects. Now, the other area that we'll cover is statewide IT contracts. So you can click on the statewide IT contract and it lists all of the ones that are available. Now, I'm not going to go through each one, but I'll tell you, if you're interested in a service, you can just click on it, and I'll just pick up the electronic digital signature. You can dig a little deeper, and it tells you who is assigned to it at our statewide office with their email, but it also tells you the scope, the vendor contact information, and usually it tells you how to use the contract. Okay, so this one, you know, in this case, you would just contact the vendor. But on all the other ones, it tells you the ordering information, what you need to do, and they're all different, but just know that it's in there. You can also see this is a convenient contract, which means for anybody in the state, you don't have to use it, but you can use it. Sometimes it's very helpful because all the terms and conditions have already been agreed to in these cases. So in the interest of time, it's just a quick hit for IT procurement. Are there any questions?
We had one in the chat, and I did test out the chatbot. I asked chatbot if the Council of State Governments could use these statewide contracts, and it couldn't help me. So I'm gonna ask James. Can the Council of Governments use these contracts? Do you know that off the top of your head?
Yeah, it would be available for any state agency, and they generally fall under the same procurement rules, so it would be acceptable for them to use.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you.
Perfect. James, thank you so much. So we will move right along to Keith Briggs. Keith Briggs. Keith, think you'll be sharing your screen?
Yep, I could take.
Perfect. But one thing before Keith gets started, we are probably going to go a little bit over. Please feel free to stay if you can. If you cannot, we totally understand. Yes, thank you so much, James, for that update. I meant to say that. Thank you so much. But if you can, please stay and listen to Keith's presentation. If you can't, we totally understand. Thanks so much.
Selena, thank you. And I realize that we're running a little behind, so I won't take too long. I will welcome anybody that wants to have a follow-up afterwards. There's a lot of content, or there could be a lot of questions. If you didn't take the survey, don't worry about it. It was just a fun little thing to kick us off. The first survey question asked the group, is it a true or false statement that you use AI every day? Interestingly enough, out of the respondents received, we got about 30. More than 55% of the people said it's false. And so I'd like to challenge your perspective on how you feel AI affects you daily. Here are 10 widely used applications. You may not know all of them, but you know, there's Siri and Alexa and Waze and Instagram and Twitter X, Grammarly, Facebook, Microsoft Defender, Apple Maps, and Google search. And I'm assuming at this point, if you're breathing, you are using one of these apps or more. And I hate to break the bubble of the 55% that said no, but every single one of these apps is currently using AI to deliver its services to you. So therefore you are using it. Again, time-wise, I wanted to share a little, even a further one. It wasn't on the previous slide, but Netflix. A lot of people use Netflix, but more importantly, a lot of people use streaming. Well, Netflix is a famous industry leader in the use of AI and their content management, and so they're also a pioneer in cloud. So they partnered with AWS a long time ago. Had any of you known that they were going to use AI or the cloud, you probably would have invested in them. And if you invested in them as they were a digital video disc mail order service, you probably would be not working for the state anymore. You'd be wealthy. You'd be sitting at your beach house. But just as a kind of a simulation, I go into Netflix, I pick my dad icon. It then manages my election selections, my views, whether or not I like things, trends, examples of content that's similar to me. But then we're hit with probably the most impactful problem with AI today. My wife uses my account. And what does she do? She picks a movie that she likes, but doesn't necessarily align with me. And of course, now my whole playlist is a mess. Second question was really around, have you ever used ChatGPT? It's more about popular culture at this point. Innovation is kind of an interesting thing. It's almost a psychology or a culture. And what makes something innovative, I think, really comes from two things. You know, our awareness and our use. We tend to be willing to use things either if it directly impacts us or as part of our social circle. And in reality, if you look at all of the famous innovations in society or history, there are few that really move, not only because of the fact that it was directly impactful to the thing that we do, but it's a huge influencer for everything else. I use an analogy of the mobile phone, 2007 iPhone. There were other smartphones out, but it wasn't until Apple really introduced us to the iPhone did the innovation take place, and that innovation was around content. It opened up the ability to develop applications in an open source framework that gave us, our capability today, and everybody around the world uses iPhones. Similarly, ChatGPT came out. We were using AI for years, decades, but it came out in a very accessible, direct access way to everyone to be able to use it. And it had over 1 million users the first week. It had 100 million active users after 2 months. And now that it's been almost 2 years, they see a sustained 180 million active users month over month, even though it's been years. More importantly, there's other areas that are now working in AI. And I think what we're going to see very soon is that it's integrated into all the services and capabilities that we have. We saw that first page of the 10, but literally there won't be any IT platforms or applications that don't have some component of AI related to it, probably within the next 2 years. That's how transformative it is. If you're not familiar with AI, it's basically a field of study. It definitely relates to things like computer science, but there's a lot of physics involved. And it's really about developing software that can perform like human intelligence. Could be pretty scary, but pretty useful depending on the use. I won't really get into the other text. I'll make the slides available. You can read through it. But it's an interesting study field. And if you're not familiar with it, you can probably go out and get quick information if you want to study more. There's lots of YouTube videos by some really well-known companies like IBM and Google that can teach you the basics, and it is helpful for everybody to begin to understand it because it's going to impact your world. There's derivatives, right? So AI is the field. I talked about AI being around for a long time. Well, we are actively using machine learning to do predictive analytics. We have been for decades. Our state governments are, our partners are. It's really the generative AI piece that's new. And basically, as a component or a derivative of machine learning and AI overall, the idea about generative AI is that it's capable of creating new and novel content from its understanding, very much like a human can. Again, keeping the time, I don't want to get too deep with it, but when I grew up as a child, we had Encyclopedia Britannica in our basement. If I wanted to do a school report, I went to that encyclopedia and I did it. For those that responded that they're familiar with ChatGPT, we're actually on ChatGPT version 4. We'll call it 4.0, but really 4 is the last one. And if you consider what the information is within that language model, it is equivalent to having 1 million encyclopedia sets. So there's a lot of information. Artificial intelligence is also really oriented around, or generative artificial intelligence is really oriented around that new content or novel content. So if you look at the image below, and you can think about it as kind of a flow, I want to put in text that says, create me an image, multimodal text to image, of a corgi dog playing a flame-throwing trumpet. It knows what a corgi looks like. It understands what a flamethrower is, and it certainly understands a trumpet, but its unique output is going to create that image to the right. If I go back in and I ask it again, it might give me a different image. And as James said with the chatbot, it's continually learning everything. It factors in everything that it has, and it's influenced by the data that it gets. Sorry about that. We talked about Encyclopedia Britannica, that being a language model. The language model itself has enough intelligence to do the basics. So we all get a dog, and we teach the dog to sit, come, stay, and go lay down. We want to keep them controlled. But if I want to do something that's a little bit more unique, my language model may not be able to do that. So I need to be able to give it specific information. Now think about this. If I use the language model to be able to speak natural language, English, but I also want to use that language model now to answer questions about statewide IT procurement, it really doesn't have the capability to answer the question specifically. So what we want to do is we want to fine tune it or train it. So we want to give it some further information. We're still using the language model, but it's actually taking the information that I'm providing, and it's now able to answer questions about special service dog. This gets further complex when we want to add industry specific things. So if I want to really be very specific about North Carolina state procurement, then I need to give it more fine-tuning information, and we can do so by feeding it documentation or data sets that allow it to actually take it from a special training to a police dog, a guide dog, and a hunting dog. That's what the technology does today. I know I'm running very fast, and I apologize. So there's opportunities. This government has opportunities just like anybody else does. It's really important, though, that we understand the difference between opportunity and risk. So today we have natural language processing. The chatbot that James showed is truly doing that. It's basically saying, I'm going to take a text input of English. I'm going to use the AI to figure out the best answer that I believe is there, the answer that I think is most probable, and it's going to give you that natural language back. In reality, what it's doing is it's converting that English that I've given it into computer numbers, ones and zeros. It's processing it through its neural network to find the best answer. Again, a mathematical calculation, and it's spitting English back out because that's the easiest thing for me to understand. That may not sound too great, but when we think about translation, like, hey, I want to translate it to Spanish. For everybody that knows me, I went to Japan for the last 2 weeks. I had Google Translate with me all the time. Google Translate has a little camera. I walked up to a restaurant with a menu that was in Japanese. I took a picture of it. It automatically translated it to English for me. It's using AI to do that. So there's huge implications, positive implications. There's things like image recognition and computer vision. Computer vision is about taking a picture and then converting it into other formats. There's analytics we talked about, robotics processing, and other things that we haven't even discovered yet. I wanted to share an example of where we're using AI. This was shared by our GDAC organization, Government Data Analytics Center. Back during COVID, there was a huge spike in fraud relating to employee services. So the Department of Employment Services worked with GDAC to develop a mechanism that used AI and machine learning to predictively establish a model that would determine whether or not someone was real and actually processing a real claim to someone that might be trying to commit fraud in that claim. And we have this up and running today. And this is a really good example. As we look at extending our use of AI, we can then start feeding it more and more information so that it can actually have a better outcome. But we are using this today. James talked a little bit about the conversational chatbot. So the chatbots itself have been around for quite a while. That isn't too new. but its ability to learn dynamically without a human having to tell it all of its information is what James was talking about, continuous learning. So we've set that up, and the chatbot will know based upon past successes and failures, as well as further inputs, that fine tuning that we showed, to be able to answer questions better on the flow all the time. Another example, so today we have ChatGPT. It's an internet-based service. You may or may have not used it, but it is risky because any information that I put into it is available for the open market, open source internet to be able to use that. You can use tools like the Power Platform and Azure to actually create a private walled-off ChatGPT-like prototype, which we've done, in which it creates a secure environment. So for any of your Duke UNC fans, or definitely if we've got two on the phone together, I asked ChatGPT, or our internal chat, which is it better. It says that it can't tell me which is better. It's really based upon preference. I get it. So then I said, well, create me something new. I want you to create a Dr. Seuss poem about UNC basketball, and it did. I won't read it to you, but it's pretty accurate, funny. I really liked it. But that's the novel aspect of what generative AI can do for us. More importantly, and applicable to work, I downloaded a National Geographic article. It was around smart cities, and the article was about 9 or 10 pages long. And if I need a quick summary of whether or not that article is actually what I'm looking for, I can do so now within this solution by depositing the document, basically fine-tuning the training, and asking it to give me a brief summary. And it gave me a summary which was accurate in one paragraph. I could ask it again, give me a more robust summary and limit it to 2 paragraphs, and it would. But this is where the value of work comes from. There are challenges. So we talked a little bit about ChatGPT and open source. As a very practical guideline, any data that's public is safe. Everything else, you need to really seriously consider the risk associated to that data. And so what we're saying generally is that if there's state data involved, and more specifically non-public, meaning it's widely available on a public site, that you need to then wall off and secure whatever AI solution you're building. There are capabilities for you to do that through existing platforms like Azure and AWS. And it's really important that you're not feeding any information into these public solutions. If you do, you have the ability to lose the data. To help further understand this and support it, the state has developed or has drafted what we call a artificial intelligence framework. It's basically a practical guide that talks about understanding generative AI in general, as well as generative AI, and aligning it to a federal standard from our NIST Institute around the risk management framework. Further, as part of kind of enabling this framework, we've established a cross-agency working group that is really there to enable Gen AI and safe and ethical use of Gen AI in state government. This has not been published yet because it's still in draft, but if you have any questions or you'd like any guidance that you can get off the internet, like the NIST RMA, let me know and I can help you dig into that. The constructs of the framework predicated on really practical but ethical principles. I won't read through each one of these again. I'll send them to you, but there's 7 of them. So human-centered, transparent, secure, having focus on data privacy and governance, making sure that there's diversity, non-discriminatory, and fairness included. That's with any software development, but even more so with Gen AI. We have the capabilities for auditing and accountability. And it's really about empowering humans, not replacing humans. Enable for use. There are some considerations that you have to think about. AI is out there, but it may not be really easy to deploy. So you have to have an overall awareness of AI, and you really should have a business goal. You want to make sure that you're people first and human centered. We like to say there's a human in the loop. So if we're deploying something that's with AI, we're making sure that there's a human checking. Again, it should be for augmentation and support of human activity, not replacement. It's really should be targeted on benefits of use. And then we have to make sure that whatever use we have, there's that ethical and responsible factors towards it. Always remember that there's a conformity to regulations and legal and governance. There may be security policies that you have to follow in your area, as well as anything at a state or federal level. The AI risk framework should support some understanding of that when it gets published, but realize there might be local rules as well that you have to comply to. And then we're asking our agencies to keep an inventory of AI tools in use and integrations, just so that we make sure we understand them. And then we really want them to make sure that they're using the NIST AI risk management framework as a reference in managing their associated risk as out there. This is kind of a repeat, but it's a highlight. We really want to make sure that we're securing it. We're aware of biases in the software. We're transparent with our use to our public, being aware of data, unintentional loss and access. With the increase of Gen AI out there, there's, consumers have to be aware that they have to be more attentive to their own use of things. Deep fakes, if you're on Instagram right now and you're following anything in sports, there's lots of deep fakes out there about, people in the public space like LeBron James. When you hear somebody say something, don't take their voice and audio as truth. Gen AI can create deep fakes very easily now that make us think that somebody's saying something. That's another thing that's possible in the election cycle. And then we have a responsibility, the state has a responsibility of our partners. I would argue that you all do as well. And as you start to consume partner services that leverage AI, you should also be aware of third-party risks associated. It doesn't indemnify us from the use. So the idea of it is we want to make sure that we're mitigating the risk at all levels and not just direct things that we develop.
We do have a quick question in the chat about the framework.
Sure.
Do you feel that might be something that is published or made available this summer, or is there a timeline on when it might be made available?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I would say that the committee that worked on it was very hopeful that it would already be out there, because obviously there's a lot going on in this space. I think the best answer I can say is that it's actively being reviewed, and it's being updated to make sure that it aligns to really where the state wants it to be. So it is hopeful that it is going to be out this summer. But I would also say that if you have questions about the use of Gen AI and maybe some guidance or direction that will help you get started, you don't have to wait for the framework to come out. You can come to the work group, and we can certainly help you through your questions, regardless. And then this is my last slide. I just want to talk to you about this as kind of what the transformation we're seeing. I know that I'm not an artist, but this is a famous picture that entered the world not too long ago. And it was entered into an art contest in the state of Colorado, and it ended up winning first place. It met all the qualifications of the art composition, but it was done 100% through AI and through a software called Midjourney, and it rattled a lot of experts. Not only from a standpoint of I'll say the purists, the artists that were doing things in old ways, but even in some of the more modern areas, they felt like, hey, this person wasn't eligible to win, or they shouldn't have won because it was digitally painted not, through other mediums. I'm not going to weigh in on whether or not I believe that this is actually qualifying correctly for the competition, or whether or not the artist shouldn't be awarded. But I will say that this is the impact of AI. It is changing the way we do things. 10 years from now, we may not even remember this picture or that award, but it's going to be integrated into our mainstream everyday life. And so I would argue we're seeing it in a microcosm here, but tomorrow it's going to be everywhere. And I would just want you guys to be aware of it. So I know that was a super rush, and I know we're over. If there's any other questions, let me know. And I appreciate the time.
That was awesome, Keith. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate that information. We know this is a hot topic, and we appreciate that. As I told Dawn, and as I also said to James, these 3 presentations could be 1 hour themselves. And we have talked in the advisory group about doing other sessions. So we may be reaching back out to you, Keith, to do another session on AI. We truly appreciate that. We have come to the end of our presentation. Thank you to the 53 people who are still online with us. And at this time, if we have any additional questions, let me go to the last slide. If we have any additional questions, feel free to either put it in the chat, or if you need to come off mute, let me know, and we can let you speak as well. You can put it in the chat if you want to speak or if you have a question.
But if anyone did hang on and have something they wanted to chat about, Felina and I will hang out for a little while longer just to see. But thank you all so much.
Okay, it doesn't look like we have any additional questions. Again, some of these we will be doing another deeper dive into, and we will let everyone know. Thank you all so much for joining us and for giving us an extra 11 minutes. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Next meeting, September 5th. I meant to say that. Next meeting, September 5th.